everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to take a look at a lovely little antique that was actually gifted to me by one of you. So thank you, Dean, so much for allowing me to have this piece. Dean also supplied to me the green and white turn of the century ensemble that I showed you guys on this channel a while ago, like a year plus ago, I think. So I will link that video as well as all of my other examining videos down below in the description. But today we are taking a look at this really lovely, simple little lady. And I figured since we looked at a 1920s corset last month, which if you haven't seen that video, that will also get linked down below, I figured we would look at a 1920s dress this month because this dress is now probably about 100 years old, which is a scary thing to think about. I don't know if you're like me, where you think of the 20s as like 80 years ago, but yeah, guess what? It's not anymore. It's 100 years ago. So we're going to take a look at this lovely 100-year-old dress. And apparently Dora wants in on the action. Dora will sit with me while I tell you about this dress before we take a look at it, at which point she will be banned from the room because there's a 100-year-old dress next to you. Really, Kat? Really? So this dress is super simple. It is actually just two pieces. The front, the back. Well, and then I guess the sleeves are another like couple of pieces each, but it's incredibly simple. I don't want to swear to it, but I believe that this dress may actually fall under the category of like the 1 hour dress that you have probably heard of. In the 1920s, that was a very popular style, the 1 hour dress. And the 1 hour dress was basically just a plain dress that then had gathering at the side, at the hips, to give it like a little bit more interest. And that is the base of this dress, though this dress does have additional embellishments that we'll get into when we look a little bit closer. So I figure why not? Let's just dive in. I'm gonna get you really up close to this dress here. We're gonna take a look at some of the little details like on the sleeves or the finishing on the edges, which is really where her details come in. And then we're going to go ahead and turn her inside out and take a look at the insides so that you can see really how she is put together. So Dora, this is your time to leave because now we're looking at an antique. Yeah, you can't be here, I'm sorry. Okay, say bye to Dora. Bye, let's look at antiques now. So as I was saying, this dress is incredibly simple. It is made out of a very lightweight ivory silk. I believe this would be like a georgette. I'm not entirely 100% certain, but I believe this is a georgette. Basically, it's semi-sheer. See how you can see my fingers in there? Semi-sheer, very lightweight, but not quite as light as a chiffon. Chiffon would be even finer. So I do believe this is a georgette. If you know otherwise, please do let me know down in the comments. But as I mentioned, it is just made out of two pieces. So we have one piece that is the entire front all the way down to the hem, and then another that is the entire back. And these pieces are joined together at the sides. We do see the armpit damage here, but they're joined together at the sides with, I believe it's a French seam is the construction. We'll take a little bit more look at that when we get inside. And then what this sash is hiding right here is really where everything is joined together. So you can see that these panels right here, these are actually much wider than the upper panels right here. So this would basically, this portion right here would have a slit, be cut, you can see the seam there, and then this skirt portion would be much longer, probably out to maybe even about here, maybe even a little longer. I don't know if you can judge that distance, but that's about a foot farther. And I haven't actually measured like the width of the skirt, but I think we're probably looking at about a foot wider than the upper portion right here. And then this was seamed to the back, so you can see the seam right there. And then this portion right here was gathered up with some gathering stitches that were actually left in there. You can see those gathering stitches right in there, and then seamed to this top portion right here. So this hip portion here is just a lot wider, and it's been gathered down to fit the bodice portion, but it is all cut in one piece. You can see there isn't any seam over here. It's just this slit that goes to right here. So it's just over the hips where we get that fullness. And of course, because this is the 1920s, it's really a dropped waist as well. So this sash kind of amplifies the drop waist, if you will. It's worn low right above the hips, right really where this is, and we'll see on the other side where it's actually attached, but this side it just hangs loose. So I do want to take a look at this sash though, because I love the little detail of the finishing on here. Look at this picot edging. It's been done all along the sash. It's also on the sleeve edges. It's just such a beautiful little detail, and it's done both sides of the sash here. So you get that gorgeous picot edging, and I mean, I can't even imagine how long that would have to take if that was a hand finish, or maybe if they had a machine that would do that for them, but it really is lovely. Down here at the hem, we have a very deep hem. Now, this is giving the dress any semblance of weight because, again, this is a very lightweight dress. So this hem is probably about 5 inches deep, and at the top you can actually see all the layers because it is sheer-ish, and it's just folded a tiny bit here at the top, probably about 3/8 of an inch, and then folded down here at the bottom for that 5-inch deep hem, and that's just stitched in place by hand with tiny stitches. Again, we'll take a look more at that when we get to the inside. So really the further detail on this comes from the sleeves and then the sash edge on the other side. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. Let's look at the neckline while we're up here, and then we'll look at the sleeves. The neckline, it's just bound with more of the georgette. I believe this is on the bias. And you can see that it's not really fully finished on the inside. You can actually see that little facing in there. So it does have a nice narrow binding on the outside. And then on the inside, it's just kind of tucked up, and you can see those long hand stitches that are used to stitch that in place. So the sleeves consist of 2 pieces, an upper piece and then a lower piece. So it's just one piece here, and they're joined together right here below this decorative stitching. And it's just fitted into the shoulder. My form doesn't really have shoulders because I've cut them down to fit the antique bodices on them, but this would be out here with a natural shoulder. And then we have this decorative stitching that is very much like another dress that I think I showed you about a year ago. I will link that one down there. That was a 19-teens, like late teens dress. And it has this sort of, this isn't a chenille, the other one was chenille. This is just a very thick, twisted, shiny thread, like embroidery thread. And then down here we have the picot edging again. And this is cut in sort of a little bit of like a handkerchief. So we have this at a diagonal right here, and then it's left open with the picot edging below where it's joined to the upper sleeve. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the other side where there's a little bit more detail. So this side is where we get to see a bit more detail going on with the dress. I mean, we do have the gathered hip just like on the other side, but on this side, the sash is actually attached. So I'm not entirely sure which way up the sash goes because it is really quite twisted where it is attached. And it was, when it came to me, it was also pinned in place in several places. So I don't know exactly where this sash wants to be, but just taking a close in look right in here, you can see there's actually quite a bit of like raw edges that are all tucked in here with the sash. So it may have been that it was kind of looped up and pinned up like this, which was kind of how it came to me when it was safety pinned, but to make like sort of a little knot right there. But it is tacked to the dress. You can see that there. And it's also tacked to the dress down here. And then it's tacked to itself in several places. So from the front to the back of the sash. Then below that, we have this little handkerchief detail, which this is attached to the skirt right here. So you can see a couple of large stitches that are tagging to the skirt. And then it's also attached to this sort of knot area up here. And then this is actually just kind of a funky kite-shaped piece of fabric. And it is finished with the picot edge as well, all the way around. And this just falls to make a lovely little handkerchief detail, giving us almost kind of like a waterfall pleat detail on the side. So here's one more overall view before we go ahead and take a look at her insides. So looking at her insides here, pretty much all the seams, not that there are many, are done with French seams, but like I mentioned before, we can see the hand stitching on the neckline binding there, where it's just very interestingly folded in and then stitched, but not like stitched down at the edge. Over here at the arm side though, we do have a French seam, so just very nicely finished. And same with down the side of the bodice portion here. And then we get to the gathers here at the hip. So you can see just how nicely these have been gathered, though I do think it's interesting that they left the stitches in almost like a cartridge pleat, but this is, I think, just, you know, hand gathering, not cartridge pleating. And then this is the fold where it was put wrong sides together so that it could be encased within there. I do apologize, by the way, for the yard work noise coming from my next door neighbors. And so it's just done very, very nicely here. And then you can see that as we continue that side seam down, we get the French seam going all the way down. So taking a look at the hem, you can see just how beautifully this was hemmed. It's coming undone just a little bit at the seam, but we're talking really quite tiny stitches that are folding up that hem. Just really, really nicely done. And frankly, that is about it for the inside of this dress. I mean, we have a very, very simple dress here. So again, we see the side gathering over here. And then this side gathering, I guess, does also technically have the tacks in it because that's where the sash connects. I figured you might be curious about some measurements as well. So here is the ruler. So right here at the underbust, right under the arm size, we're looking at a laid flat measurement of about 18 inches, so 36 inches across at the bust. And there really is no waist. I mean, the waist would be, I guess, probably about like here-ish. But I mean, it's 1920s, so frankly, there really is no waist to speak of, and they didn't care about having a defined waist. But that is about 20 1/4 laid flat, so 40 1/2. And then the hip, which was really the defining portion of this, laid flat, if I can get my ruler there, we're looking again like 20 1/4. So it's really the same from the waist to the hip, and it just goes out a little bit from the bust to the waist and hip. So we're just talking like a slight angle going in and then going out there. But yeah, I mean, really quite simple. It is nice that this appears to be a slightly larger size when we're looking at like a 40-inch, but remember that's a 40-inch hip, really, not really. I mean, it is a 40-inch waist, but really it's more of a 40-inch hip. So you do have to keep that into consideration. When we were taking a look at the sleeve before, it was the other sleeve, by the way, and one of the rows of stitching has come out on the other sleeve, but you can see there are 3 rows of decorative stitching. These ones are only just starting to edge their way out, and that's just done right through the fabric. It was probably with a larger needle because you can kind of see the holes that have been left by having that thicker thread in there. And that is really going to be it for our super simple little 1920s lady today. So I do appreciate having this in my collection now, especially now that the 20s are antiques and not vintage. Again, very, very weird to think about. In general, though, I'm really not a fan of 20s fashion because, frankly, I don't feel like it looks flattering at all on pretty much any figure. So I doubt that I will ever be making 20s fashion for myself on this channel because it's just not a decade that I'm into. It is kind of nice though to look at the elegance that can be found in absolute simplicity like you have in this lovely little dress right here. By the way, I did steam her. Normally I don't steam or iron or anything like that any of my antiques. This one, A, is newer, B, other than the armpit, she's in excellent condition, and C, it was just a crumpled ball of, like, I couldn't even tell that it was a dress. Honestly, I pulled it out of a Ziploc bag and it was like, oh, this is a 1920s dress. Let's steam her up a little and see how she does. So she's been nicely steamed and will now go into the archival boxes that I keep all of the rest of my antiques in. And by the way, if you are interested in seeing how I store my antiques, I did do a video on that last year, so I will link that video down below as well. But for now, I hope that you enjoyed this look at this lovely 100-year-old lady here. If you did like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs out on Tuesdays and other costuming content like this out on Saturdays, which again, this is part of my monthly series on examining antiques, so that playlist is linked below and there will be another one next month. And in the interim, I also post every day over on Instagram, so please do go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below. I'd also like to give a humongous thank you to all of my wonderful Patreon patrons. I seriously could not do it without you guys. You mean absolutely the world to me, seriously. And I especially want to thank all of my patrons at the Romantic, Victorian, and Edwardian level tiers. And they are Sharon, Julie, Mirage, Ari, Audra, Emily H, Jean, Kate, Maria, Sarah, Tiffany, Bobby, Cherries, Denise, Elizabeth E, Elizabeth W, and Kim. Thank you all again so much to all of those patrons, all of the rest of my patrons, and all of you for joining me here today. I do hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Happy sewing!